Happy Wednesday night! Welcome to Deep in the Plus. I'm your host, Rob Whiteside. Thank you for being with us as always. If you have not already, please subscribe to WDWNT TV for more great content and give this video a thumbs up as it helps people to find us. If you've never been to Deep in the Plus before, we usually take a TV show or a movie from Disney Plus and talk about it, but tonight we're doing something a little different. We're doing a rankings. And when we think rankings with Star Wars, how can we not have Desi with us? How are you, Desi?
May the force be with you, Rob.
And also with you. Let us pray. We've done a couple ranking shows already. It started with Pixar rankings, and that was a thing that Patrick and I did. That didn't go over so well.
Very angry.
I know most people were. So, and then we did rankings. You and I did rankings of the Star Wars movies, the theater releases, and then Patrick and I did a ranking of the Marvel Disney Plus TV shows. So, what we're doing tonight is a ranking of the Star Wars Disney Plus originals. But we have some caveats. We have some specifics that you and I talked about ahead of time, because your first thing was we should rank Star Wars, and then your next thing was what should we count? And so when we went in to start talking about it, we picked the 9 originals that I think worked the best. One that we were kind of on the fence about that I suggested, and you said, we shouldn't do that one, was the Clone Wars, the final season of Clone Wars, because that was Disney Plus original. But you said...
How can you rank just one season when the rest of the seasons were, released prior to Disney Plus? So that one felt a little weird to me. I suggested the Grogu Dust Bunny as one instead. But then you said, if we start going down that rabbit hole, then we're going to have to include all of the Lego specials. So
right. Because the Lego specials were also, there were several of them that are exclusive to Disney Plus. And so
they would
what we
be
were
ranked like 1 and 2 for me.
Well, there you go. We've solved that problem. What we're going to be talking about, though, are not just the live-action shows like Andor and Obi-Wan and Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett and Ahsoka, but we're also going to be talking about the animated, not the Clone Wars, but Bad Batch and Visions and Tales of the Jedi and Young Jedi Adventures. So we're doing 9. And so one of the things that stands out to me immediately before we get into the rankings is when I was a kid, I had the original Star Wars movies and, of course, the holiday special that I know that you love. But we didn't have anything else. And it was one of those things where I was like, this is it. Star Wars is done. Like these 3 movies are Star Wars to me for the rest of my life. And then George Lucas went, oh, let's do special edition versions and then re-release those and then do 3 prequels. And then I thought after that, okay, it's a 6-movie series. It's done. And then when Disney bought Lucasfilm, they were like, we're going to do some more movies. Here's 3 more. Plus, we're going to do these Star Wars stories things. And then, of course, when Disney Plus rolled around, they were like, oh, boy, we got a lot of stuff for you. I think that a lot of people felt maybe there was too much Star Wars when Solo and Rogue One. Not for me, but I feel like there was some burnout on Star Wars in the theater. And then Disney Plus comes along and they're like, buckle up. It's called The Mandalorian, and it's going to be your favoriteest show ever, and you're going to love it, and which then ushered in a whole lot of other Star Wars content. So if Disney Plus, when it came out, if you were on the fence, would Mandalorian have been the thing that made you go, I'm in forever?
Yeah, absolutely. It would have. I mean, when Disney Plus came out, I was going to get it anyways, just because I'm a mom and I've got young kids and they need to watch Disney movies, and it's probably more affordable doing it this way, at least at the time I thought, because it was like $6 when it came out. More affordable to do it this way than to try to buy all of the DVDs. Probably in the long run, they're still getting more money out of me. But yeah, Mandalorian right out of the gate was something that I was like, that is the first thing I want to watch on Disney Plus.
Yep. I mean, there was promise of that, and then Marvel stuff, and of course Marvel got delayed because of COVID. But honestly, like, this is a playground now for all of this great Star Wars content. I don't know how you can be a Star Wars fan and not have Disney Plus, not just because of the access to the theater movies or the Clone Wars, but also to have access to all of this original content that comes out. And there are the specials like the Grogu short and things like that. But I honestly like this the Marvel and the Star Wars stuff keeps me engaged, and I can't wait for the next one to roll around. Currently, I'm into the Percy Jackson thing, which then I was like the Echo on Marvel snuck up on me because I'm doing Percy Jackson, and then, you and I talked about this, and I went back and rewatched some stuff that I hadn't watched, or actually I watched some stuff that I hadn't watched yet. And so as we're ranking it, that may affect me a little bit, but let me just, as we get into the rankings, I'm just going to say that I had criteria for my listings that was,
Same.
there was what?
I also had criteria.
Yeah, so let's talk about the criteria. We'll set the ground rules first. Mine was that it had to be something that I felt was important to the canon, and that also I enjoy. I'm not, and that I would recommend. So, I mean, I'm not going to necessarily recommend everything, even though I like so many things. And there's a lot of things that I like that I wouldn't recommend to other people. So, but that's my thing is it important to the Star Wars story and what I recommend it? What are your thoughts on that?
My criteria was how much do I care about the well-being of these characters? So,
Interesting.
because for me, my number one was probably going to be number one all along, and then everything else was tied for number two because I just love everything. So yeah, that's because if I was ranking on based on how much I enjoyed it, everything would be number two, except for the one that's number one.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say then that's the same thing that I said when we started a lot of these rankings. When we started ranking the Star Wars movies, when we started ranking the Pixar movies, is I'm not going to say that any of these are awful. That's just not going to happen because I think that there is a quality to all 9 of the shows that we're going to rank that make it stand out over something else. But we're going to put them in order, which is going to make it seem like, oh, we think this one kind of blows, but that's not where we're going with that. Before we go any further, though, I do want to thank Rosita is in chat and has the super chat queen has left
queen.
a $20 super chat. She says, just
Aww.
showing my love for Deep in the Plus. I'm gonna go ahead and assume Deep in the Plus because it says D plus, and my girl Desi. So there you go.
My girl.
Yeah.
Oh.
I'm not her girl, apparently. It's all good. But Rosita, we appreciate you. Thank you so much for the super chat. And so, all right. So let's get into the rankings of this, and I'm going to start the rankings, and we're going to do it the way we've done it in the past. I have this super, oh my gosh, it is so fancy. Wait a minute. Let me pull it up here. It's going to be great. You're going to love it. Hang on a second. Oh, that's why. This very professional ranking tool called Google Sheets. Oh my gosh, it's so great. I know, right? Look at that.
Wow.
How about that? So we're going to go start at number 9, make our way down to number 1. We'll go back and forth with each of them. But I'm going to start with mine, and my number 9 is going to be Visions. Anime is its own subculture, obviously, and it's very hot. My son loves to have like anime nights when the new season starts and bring that stuff out. But like, I was like, I'm gonna sit down with him and we'll watch these, and it's interesting. It's definitely interesting because it's these individual anime artists, and they're bringing their Star Wars visions to life in this series. But I'm entertained by it, but it's not something I would go back and watch, and I don't feel like it's important to the canon, so I'm putting that one at number 9. So the next 2 go to you.
Okay. My number 9 is ironically the one that I watch the most. That's because I have little kids. So I watch Young Jedi Adventures so much. And I think maybe just because I watch it so much, that's why I'm like, I don't care about these characters anymore. Just get them off my screen. Not because it's bad. It's still a good show. I enjoy it. It's certainly better than other things my kids could be watching. But if you give me the choice between Young Jedi Adventures and Bluey, I'm going to pick Bluey every time. Also, when I'm thinking about how much do I care about these characters, not one of these characters says anything about their parents. None of them. None of them love their mothers. I gotta know, is Anakin the only Jedi ever who missed his mom? Because none of these little kid Jedis seem to care. They're all like, woohoo, we're out in the world, we're doing our own thing. You know, the only adult figure they seem to have in their life is their Jedi master. So, I don't know, from mom's point of view, how I feel about that.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah, what's your...
Episode was, you know, this, it was really, I loved the art style. Just like came out of the gate swinging. This guy, you know, says he's not a Jedi, he's wielding a red saber, and then you come to find out he's a Sith hunter. And he's going around collecting red kyber crystals. I'm like, ooh, that's exciting. Ooh, that's interesting. And then we get to the next episode. I'm like, oh, these are all individual. Oh, I
Right.
didn't
Where was that
realize
story?
that.
Like, what's
Like,
next in
I
there?
want to keep following that guy.
Yeah.
So some of them were certainly better than others. I'm not personally like a huge anime fan. Not that I have anything against it. It's just I've not watched a lot of it in my life. So I did enjoy the art style. I thought that was really interesting, really beautifully done. Some of them are a bit weird, like the rabbit girl who was adopted. That one was a bit weird for me. The idea that a droid could be a Jedi, no, that wasn't for me. But again, all 9 of these I get enjoyment out of. So I don't really want to bash any of them, but I'm just saying this is why it was number 8 for me. And I can't, because my criteria was how much do I care about these characters, because we only get one episode with each character, really. It doesn't build up enough for me to care about them the way I do some of the others.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was looking. Neko was like, Vision should be its own category. It is, you know, again, it's Disney Plus original, but and they are beautiful, but it is anime, and you know, it's broken up stories. It's a little bit different, so I totally get that. I will say we're not too far off, because for my number 8, it was Young Jedi Adventures. You had asked me pre-show, you were like, have you watched all these before we decided to rank them? And I said no. There were a couple that I hadn't watched, and Young Jedi Adventures was definitely one of them. Nubs is like my older son. Like, he has decided that's his favorite character is Nubs. Never
He
seen the
is
show.
cute.
Never seen the show, but he's decided that Nubs is his favorite character. So,
He's adorable.
yeah, I get that. But I like the little throws they do. Like, I assume RJ-83 is for Return of the Jedi from 1983. I assume that's why they
How
call
did I
him.
not pick up on that until right
I
now? Wow.
immediately I picked up on that. Immediately they were like, no, RJ-83, and I'm like, why would you? Oh, that makes sense. Okay, that's cool. D. Bradley Baker is the voice of Nubs. But when you were talking about the parents thing, I was thinking about Nash. It's like, not only are you talking about a kid, like, you know, untethered, but like that basically has her, you know, she's just her own pilot.
Yep. She's got her own ship. How'd she get it? I don't know. She's got
Yeah.
no authority. She's not even a Jedi. She's just got her own ship, her own droid. Where are her parents? I don't know.
No idea. But yeah, you know, I love the fact, and it's something that they kind of talked about when they rolled this out at D23, was it's an entry into the world of Star Wars for little kids. They
Yes.
don't have to know the backstory of Darth Sidious to be able to know, you know,
Right.
to be able to get into this. It's basically, you know, you were talking about you'd rather watch Bluey. This felt like little Einsteins, but Jedi's. You know, I mean, it's
Not as
Dora the
educational.
Jedi.
Maybe more Dora. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you know, it's like, well, we can't win. Oh, what if we use teamwork? Yeah. And we're not. Um, so you know, I love that it exists, and it's funny to see it. It's almost like, I used to collect, and still do. I don't know why I said used to, Star Wars figures. And when they came out with like the Galactic Heroes series, like those little flat, fat Star Wars character guys, that was cute. It was like, hey, here's a kid's entry level into Star Wars figures and play. That's kind of what this is. So I appreciate it for what it is. But at the same time, I'm not as into it. I mean, not as into it. Obviously, I don't have small children, but yeah, it's not as important to me to the big picture. I think I'm going to probably ruffle some feathers on number 7.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, yeah, because for me, number 7, I enjoyed it, but I'm gonna say is probably Andor, because honestly, it's
Oh,
one of those.
we can't be friends.
I know, but it's one of those things where most of the stuff that's on Disney Plus for the rankings falls into the regular, like, and I say regular, but like the movie series on a regular basis. This one seems to be a little bit more onto an island unto itself, because we're trying to rewind before the events of Rogue One in another world. And so I think it's good storytelling. I really do. I enjoyed it. We did a review of it, you, me, and I think it was you, me, Nick, and Ron. And, I enjoyed it. But again, we've got 9 here, and something has to go down at the bottom there. So I put Andor at number 7. So cards and letters coming. Go ahead.
All right.
What are your next 2?
Speaking of ruffling feathers, I can feel Neko's head exploding from here. This was my husband's number 2, and I feel so bad. I'm so sorry, but it's Ahsoka. Ahsoka
What?
was, yeah. I I didn't watch Rebels, so I wasn't super familiar with the characters already. I did watch recaps to get up to speed. I feel like it would be hard for anybody who didn't watch Rebels to feel connected to these characters. I don't know. My husband did somehow. It's his number 2. Even though he had never seen Rebels, he did not watch the recaps with me. He loved the characters. I think it's mostly because of Thrawn. He thought was super cool. I love Thrawn. I love seeing Hayden again as Anakin. I love seeing C-3PO. I love seeing Mon Mothma. Um, um, I I really want to learn more about Baylan Skull and Shin Hati. I thought those 2 characters were fantastic. I want to learn more about, this idea of they're not Jedi, they're not Sith, there's something in the middle. Are they Bendu? I don't know. Um, Really, really interesting. But I felt like Ahsoka herself seemed too stoic, so I couldn't care about her too much. I didn't love how it ended. Getting run through with a lightsaber means nothing. And then what they did meant that Ezra's sacrifice at the end of Rebels meant nothing because, okay, now Thrawn and Ezra are back in the main galaxy. Exactly. So that did nothing. And now Thrawn's going to go help build the First Order. So what they did was very, very bad. Very bad. I'm not saying the show was bad. I still love the show. Like I said, all 9 of these I really enjoyed. So I feel bad putting it here, but it's because of my criteria of how much do I care about the well-being of these characters. And I just personally didn't feel as connected to these characters as some of the other shows. That's why it is here for me. And I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I get it. So wait, that means you've got one more to throw.
Okay. All right. So then my next one would be another Ahsoka show. Not that I don't care about Ahsoka, because I do. But Tales of the Jedi is next for me. Baby Ahsoka was adorable. But again, you see her mom, and then they're like, at the end of the first episode, it's like, oh, Ahsoka is a Jedi. So then what? Did the Jedi come and take her immediately? I don't really know how that works because I know that they thought that Anakin was too old to be trained. Is that what they do? They just take babies because Obi-Wan didn't even remember whether or not he had a brother. Um, Also, it was kind of weird to for her mom to make her watch her kill an animal, even if it was for food, when she's just like a 1 year old. Um, I don't know. It, Interesting fun fact: Mom was voiced by the same voice actress as Iden Versio from the video games. Um, Also, baby Ahsoka, 1 years old, tames this tiger thing, and Anakin didn't know he was force sensitive until he was 10. Luke didn't know till he was like 19. Baby Ahsoka seems very strong with the Force. But other than just like that baby Ahsoka stuff, um, I did enjoy getting to learn more about Qui Gon Jinn and Dooku and their backstory and kind of seeing a little bit more about why Dooku fell to the dark side. And I loved seeing Yaddle. We never get to see Yaddle, but also R.I.P. Yaddle. And I feel like I didn't know why it was called Tales of the Jedi and why it started with Baby Ahsoka, and then you kind of cut to this Dooku storyline, and then you come back to Ahsoka. But then I kind of figured out why it was her saying she wasn't a Jedi and she walked away. And then you saw how when Dooku walked away, what happened to him. And then at the end, when she helps those people, and um, they basically make it sound like you can't run away from who you are. That kind of explains why she had said previously, I am no Jedi. And then you see her again in The Mandalorian, and she is a Jedi. And it's like, what the heck? I thought she wasn't a Jedi anymore. But I think this kind of helped to explain why she was.
I am no Jedi.
Yeah.
Yeah. I I I I I get that. So with the animated stuff, I'm in a weird place, and I think you are too, with where they go in the batting order. For me, my number six was Bad Batch, and I watched it the first time, freaking loved it. And part of the thing is that I'm not deep into the Clone Wars animation. I like it. I appreciate it. It was just a lot. It was like 20 episodes. It's like 76 episodes. It was like 20 episodes a season. It's probably more than that. It was like 20 episodes a season. And so I didn't really get a chance to like get involved with that because it felt like it wasn't really part of the story that I wanted to know at the time. Now I wish I had, when it was out, watched it live, because going back seems like a huge daunting task. I've seen some. I've seen like a lot of the first season. But the Bad Batch seemed like a good entry into the world of the clones, and I kind of love that it can stand on its own and you can watch it without having to necessarily know all the history. I love that each of the clones has their own personality and the own thing that they bring to the table, and the introduction of Omega, and I'm down for it. And like season 3 has been announced, and I will go and watch season 3 as well. But like we said, there's 9 spots here, and something has to go nearer to the bottom. And then when I think about how much it matters to the canon of specifically Disney Plus Star Wars, I feel like it's lower on the list. So I have Bad Batch at number 6. So just as like a recap of where we're at, and the people who were making angry out there. So we both said Visions and Young Jedi Adventures in the first 2, so we're not too far off on those. But the other 4 that we have here are all completely different. So, so just so we know we're on the same page. But again, like we said, we have like different criteria for how we were listing them. We'll see if it gets more even as we get closer to the top. But I'm going to go ahead and throw in at this point Tales of the Jedi. Now, I like it better than Bad Batch because I feel like it's really cool the way that they go back in and they bring in these stories. I wanted to know, and you talked about this a little bit too, is I wanted to know more about Count Dooku. When I first saw Tales of the Jedi come up, they use Ahsoka as the visual for it, and I thought, okay, this is just Ahsoka's story from beginning to end, and it's really not. It's really kind of a sampling of other stories in the Jedi realm, and I would almost love to see this made into some sort of a TV show unto it, like a live action unto itself, or even a movie series. Because we talked about when we talked about the movies and ranking them, that Rogue One and Han Solo are a Star Wars story. They're not part of the trilogies that are out there. They're not part of the Skywalker saga. They are, but they are. Like, they weren't originally supposed to be. They were supposed to be happening somewhere else in this galaxy far, far away. And instead, they tie in very closely to that story now. So they're just kind of supplemental. But I'd love to see this live action stuff, or this in live action somewhere. In the meantime, Tales of the Jedi, they could come back and retell that story that you were talking about right after Ahsoka, and the young Ahsoka, and then go back through again and tell those stories. In sort of a comparison to What If, I feel like it's one that you could have these little one-offs and tell these tales, because they don't necessarily, they're in chronological order if you watch them episode 1 through 6, but they don't necessarily have to be. You could watch one by itself. I did love the second episode where Liam Neeson's son plays Qui-Gon's voice. I think that was kind of cool.
What? I did not know that.
Yeah, that was kind of cool. And I love how much it looks like him, so that like we know that that's supposed to be Qui-Gon. The first episode though bothered me in the same ways that you did, because I'm like, she's wearing a baby and shooting a gun. Like, that doesn't seem like a good idea. Like, maybe you should have left the baby at home if you were going hunting, but I guess she wanted to teach the baby the ways of the hunt. There's a couple things about that.
If they did not have the episode 1, just started with episode 2, because I feel like episode 1 is just the one that I had the most problems with.
Well, and like there was a lot of it that was very dark. Like, hey, she's going out to shoot what I guess is the equivalent of a deer. There was a lot of interesting animals in their world that we were introduced to, and why there aren't stuffed versions of all of them at Galaxy's Edge at this point, I don't know. But it was really like, I thought it was neat to go back and go back to these characters, and maybe we don't know the turning of Dooku, what drove him to turn the way that he did, and now we see that sprinkled in here. So it really feels like it's more of Dooku's story than it is Ahsoka's story, but it really feels like that they leaned into the Ahsoka thing, and maybe it was because that's Dave Filoni's girl, or maybe it's because they knew that the Ahsoka series was I don't know why, but it just looked visually, when you're going through Disney Plus, like this is just Ahsoka, and then you find like the Dooku story is in there, and I thought it was pretty cool. And it's an easy watch. It's like each one is like 16 to 18 minutes, so that's why I put it above Bad Batch on that one. So it's back to you. What you got?
I have the Bad Batch next. This, for me, starts I really care about these characters. The ones previously, I enjoyed the shows, but I didn't care about the well-being of the characters, and like, I need these characters to survive. I care about them. They feel like family to me. Meeting the Bad Batch, it was really interesting to see things from a clone's point of view post Order 66, and these clones who, at first they thought they were just anomalies, something was wrong with them, and then they find out, oh, actually it turns out you were made this way on purpose. Really, really interesting. The one thing that really bothered me in this show was Moochie. I loved Moochie, okay? I thought Moochie was adorable. Moochie is a Rancor who belongs to Jabba the Hutt. She's adolescent at this point in the timeline, which means I think Luke Skywalker kills Moochie, and it just makes me so upset to think that Luke Skywalker murders Moochie.
If you could go back in time and kill Moochie before she eats all the Gamorrean guards.
I can't believe it. They made me like a Rancor, and then you realize, oh no, this Rancor belongs to Jabba the Hutt. And by the time Return of the Jedi happens, she's gonna be murdered by Luke Skywalker, and it just
But in
makes me
Book of
so
Boba,
sad.
but in Book of Boba Fett, I feel like they also make you like the Rancor.
Right, but that's a different Rancor. In Book of Boba Fett, it is established there are no Rancors in that cage or
I'm just
pit, whatever.
I,
So
all I'm
Lucci is
saying
gone.
is they also make you like a Rancor. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Like, so that's similar.
Um,
Sorry,
but
go
it
ahead.
also makes me realize why in Return of the Jedi that guy was so upset when the Rancor died. Um, so I saw some fan theories online that Wrecker turns out to be that Rancor keeper from Return of the Jedi. He has gone back at some point to take care of Muchi, and then that's why he's so upset when Muchi dies.
Dawn says
Um,
that was self-defense, not murder.
uh, I
He
just
started it, is
R.I.P.
what she's
Muchi.
saying. He started it, or she, or whatever. Um, yeah,
But I'm also really interested to find out if we get another book of Boba Fett, or if Boba Fett shows up, in this Mandalorian movie that's happening, will Omega show up as well? What
yeah,
would Omega look like as an adult? Does he know about her? They made
right.
it sound like he was Alpha, she was Omega. Um, and then they changed his name to Boba. They didn't really explain that. It was just like, oh, he was born Alpha and she was born Omega, and then they changed his name to Boba. Why? And also, did Jango Fett raise her the way he did with Boba, and she just didn't happen to be there that day? She was off doing something else, or
I would
like,
assume that Django renamed him Boba because it was
yeah,
like we're giving you one, you just happen to get Alpha.
okay.
That's my guess.
So I wonder if Boba even knows that exists.
It's almost like Marvel, right? Where they Marvel goes in and they open up. Like I was rewatching the Elementals, the Eternals. Sorry, Elementals completely different. Eternals. I was rewatching the Eternals, and they introduce all of these characters, the Harry Styles character, and the Kit Harington character, and all these characters are introduced, and you're like, where are you going with this? Are you ever going anywhere with this? And that could be the same thing here. It's like we've left open all of these doors, and we can do so much in this universe, in this Star Wars universe. Will they ever go there? I don't know. There was a movie of, I don't know if you ever saw the TV show or read the books for Lemony Snicket, A Series of Unfortunate Events, but there was a movie for it, and they start talking about this spyglass in there that wasn't part of the book. And I'm like, where are they going with this? And then the movie just died at the box office, and then they rebooted it with the TV show with Neil Patrick Harris. I'm like, I wanted to see where this was going. Um, so it's same thing with a bunch of the Marvel stuff and a bunch of the Star Wars stuff. I want to see where is this going, and there's too much. There's not enough time, and you would think that when they opened up this palette of Disney Plus, there would be more than enough. But they really have, whether it's because of money or whether it's because of oversaturation, they've really kind of dialed back in a lot of ways the things they're planning on doing, especially in Marvel, because they announced all this stuff D23 or like before COVID, and it was like Kevin Feige was on stage. He's like, "Oh, but there's more. There's this and this and this and this. Oh, and there's more. There's this and this and this." And we're just like, "Yes." And then again, COVID happened. They're like, do we really need that series? And let's change the Agatha Harkness series title 3 times.
Right?
Sorry. Go ahead. What's your number 4? I think it's to you, right?
Um, I don't know.
Because
Do
you
you
did
have
Bad
do you
Batch.
have the where are we on the list?
I did Bad Batch and Tales of the Jedi. That was 6 and 5.
Okay.
You did Tales of the Jedi and Bad Batch, so reversed them. So we're down to number
Okay.
4. Where you at? What you got?
Okay. My number 4 is the Obi-Wan show, which again, I loved. I loved every moment of it. I loved seeing, especially that scene like where you see Hayden's face kind of behind where the mask has broken off, and you hear like the combo of Hayden's voice and James Earl Jones's voice. Um, and I loved little Leia. I thought she was adorable. Um, and when I say that like I ranked these based on how much I cared about the characters, a lot of it has to do with the side characters for this one because I already know what's going to happen to Obi-Wan. I already know what's going to happen to Leia. Um, this was not ranked as high as some of the other ones because I didn't love Reva. I can't even remember how to pronounce her name. I didn't feel like they made her likable enough for me to get invested in her because she was a bad guy almost the whole time. So I didn't care about her well being. Um, and, I couldn't get too invested when I already know what's going to happen to Bill and Leia and Obi-Wan and even Vader. But I'll tell you two characters it made me care about Owen Lars and Beru Lars because those two are some awesome parents. They have to be the best parents, and they're adopted. They're raising his stepmother's son, so they're raising his stepbrother's son. Um, it that he only met Anakin once, and his meeting of Anakin was Anakin bringing home Shmi on her deathbed after murdering a whole bunch of Tusken Raiders, which we learned from the um, Boba Fett show that they're actually good people, except for these Tusken Raiders apparently, because he needed to murder them, all of them, and not just the men, but the women and the children too. But Owen and Beru, yes, they are some bad A's. They took out like they're some good fighters that I did not see coming. So I sent Rob this gif, not gif, meme ahead of
Meme.
time because I'm like, this is how it made me feel about Owen and Beru. Because you see, Owen comes in, he's like, oh, he just saw the bodies and left. Because it, based on the Owen and Beru that we see in the Obi-Wan show, they should have been able to take on those stormtroopers. Uh, yeah. And stormtroopers by this point are not clones. They're not the sharpshooters that maybe old Ben remembers from his time as Obi-Wan in the Clone Wars. They are just regular people who have been, you know, who signed up to join the military basically for the Empire. And so that's why they weren't as good shots anymore. That's why stormtroopers suck at their job by the time you get to A New Hope compared to maybe what he remembers from the Clone Wars when they were all awesome. Um, so yeah, that is my headcanon now. Owen and Beru made it through. Those were bodies of stormtroopers.
Okay. All right. I'm down. All right. So number 4 for me is Ahsoka, and I will tell you that it's I had to do a lot of soul searching on that one, because I loved Rebels. Like Rebels to me was like, okay, I missed getting in, as I mentioned, on the Clone Wars train, and when I picked up with Rebels, loved Rebels. Rebels to me is the perfect animated Star Wars show. Like we're talking about Bad Batch and Tales of the Jedi, and we talked about the Clone Wars over here. And to me, I think that that's a great introduction, honestly, to Star Wars. And we were talking about that being Young Jedi Adventures. I think it's a really good introduction, because it's a little bit more mature, but not too mature. It has the throwbacks to characters but yet at the same time, they're not all in your face because we're learning about, like, the squad, the team, the fam, and honestly, I loved that. So when Ahsoka was introduced in I think it was in Mandalorian, and that she was introduced, when she was introduced live action, I was like, oh, this is going to be cool. But then Ahsoka ended up really being Rebels season 5. Like, and so I get what you're saying, and why you ranked it so low is because you weren't really, engaged with it. And a lot of the stuff that I associate with, I've probably ranked this higher than I should because I was fanboying over seeing some of these characters in live action. Honestly, like, and now I'm forgetting his name, but Clancy Brown. Clancy Brown voiced, like, the 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 mayor. I forget the proper term. Um, and he voiced it, and we see him live action as the same character that he was in Rebels. So I'm just like, oh, that's really cool that they, that they can do that they bring him in. Sometimes they don't, like when they didn't bring Ashley Eckstein into the role of Ahsoka. But I really liked this show. I was looking forward to it each week because of that. Now I do think that plot wise, you're right. I mean, they've made things worse. Will there be a season 2? Yes, they've just announced that. So I'm looking forward to being able to see Ahsoka season 2 and hope that fixes some of the story stuff that we've been left behind on. But I do think she's a great character, and I loved seeing this, like the rebels, like Sabine and Ezra. I don't know why Zeb wasn't in this, because they introduce him in Mandalorian.
Right.
Why was he not in? Like, we've already been set up for this. Pull the team back together as best you can, obviously. But
'Cause
that would have
he's
been pretty cool.
busy being a pilot for the he was supposed to be in the other show that got canceled.
Yeah. So yeah, I that's Ahsoka's my number 4. Let's take a look back at the scorecard, and again, we're a little bit matched at this point. Um, our first 2 were the same, just reversed. 6 and 5 were the same, just reversed. So we're not too far off, I think. I had Ahsoka obviously much higher. I can't wait for you to bust out Andor at number 3, but I guess we'll wait for that to be a surprise. But again, they're not too far off in the way that they're lined up there. So, um, yeah. So I'm actually putting Book of Boba Fett at number 3, because I love Boba Fett. Love. Like, it's unexplainable. Inexplainable. Yes. Like that I mean, as a kid, just like I loved Boba Fett. I think I talked about, like, I cut out Kenner action figure like backings, which now I'm like, why did I do that? Why didn't I leave them pristine on the card? So that I could mail in and get like the Boba Fett action figure that was only available as a mail-in order. And I mean, I'm a huge Boba Fett fan. I love the vibe and the aesthetic of the Mandalorian, being based off of the same thing. So I feel like they've all my childhood dreams have come true with that. However, Book of Boba Fett didn't tell the Boba. It fixed. It told you why and how he got out of the pit. It told you how he survived. It brought us all into that. But there was a lot of flashback and things like that. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of it, it becomes Mandalorian season 2.5, just like randomly, like in the middle of it. And I'm like, wait,
Yeah.
what? Like, I would have rather them told an entire story about Boba Fett rather than bringing the Mandalorian into it, because I think that it puts you in a weird spot. You can't just watch this on its own, because if you were a Star Wars fan and you liked Boba Fett and you just wanted to watch the Book of Boba Fett, you can't, because like so much of it is Mandalorian. And honestly, I thought it was a little slow at the beginning when we're doing all the flashbacks and the back to tank, but when it finally gets going, and we talked about this when we reviewed it as well, but when it finally gets going, I feel like it's great. And then they throw in the Mandalorian stuff, and I like it, like Grogu and all of that stuff. But it's just I don't like that it wasn't its own story, that it was Mandalorian season 2.5. So I feel like it had to be included. You have to watch it, and not just like it can stand on its own. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, cool. So that's my number 4 and number 3. So it's back to you for number 3 and number 2.
Well, that would also be why Book of Boba Fett was my number 3. Not because I disliked having a couple random episodes of The Mandalorian in there, but because I loved it.
But let me back up and say I liked the Mandalorian stuff because I love the Mandalorian. I like that, but
Yeah.
they were, yeah, like the Ahsoka stuff is similar because you had to know Rebels. But yeah, the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Yeah, the I would say that the down parts of this were things like the mods. Didn't love that, but if you get Mando Grogu, and Luke Skywalker in the show, I'm not ranking it low. Um, I also love Fennec Shan. She's one of my favorite characters. Also from the Bad Batch. So love her. Love Ming Na. Yay Mulan. Um, and I thought Jennifer Beals as a Twi'lek was gorgeous.
Yeah.
Loved her. Um, Loved seeing Cad Bane, also from the Bad Batch, in live action. And when you talk about like how much do I care about these characters, other than the mods, sorry, I love them. I care about these characters so much. I even care about Pelimoto and the Major Domo. Like I ship them. I ship Pelidomo. Make that. I want that like rom com, please. A Star Wars rom com starring Pelimoto and the Major Domo from Book of Boba Fett. Let's make it happen, please. Um, I thought the show was so much fun, and I know that people have problems with it, with some of the pacing. I personally didn't have a problem with it. I thought it was interesting to go back and learn a little bit more about Tusken Raider culture. And also, I just love Kiwi accents. So the more Tamara Morrison speaks, the more I love it. Uh, which is probably also why I love the Bad Batch. Yes, and sorry, Chewbacca. Santo is my favorite Wookiee now. Love him.
You know what's funny is that when my son and I went to Star Wars Celebration, we each bought one of the Santo stuffed animals because yeah, he's amazing. So I agree with that part of it. That's why I wanted to put that. It's like don't sleep on him. No, that's good stuff. Yeah, but I mean, again, we're talking about number 3 out of 9, and both of us have Book of Boba Fett. But I'm just saying, I would have loved more of Boba Fett, and maybe even some like flashback to like old, like original, like young Boba Fett would have been cool. Not young as in like the one
I mean, they
from.
showed him. I didn't feel like
Yeah,
that part was necessary because
I want in
they didn't do
between.
anything with it.
I want in
Yeah.
between, not the Clone Wars, and not um you know Empire necessarily, but like somewhere in between there is what I'd like to see. And
When he still looks like Django.
yeah, tell that story. Like tell that story. And maybe that's, you can't put Tamar Morrison in that one, and that's why that's a problem. But and he is awesome, by the way, in everything that he does. Agree. So all right, number 2.
Number two is something that I did not expect to like or care about the characters as much as I did, because, like in Obi-Wan, I already know what happens to Cassian. So that is why Andor is my number two.
The
But
clock is
I got
ticking on Andor. He's we know bad things are coming for him. It's coming faster
I
in
got
season 2.
I got super invested in all of the other characters other than Andor. Sadly, Andor was the least interesting character in this show. Um, I I loved Kino Loy and that prison break. That was incredible. Seeing like the visuals of the eye, that was so beautiful. Um, Getting to know a little bit more about Mon Mothma. She's like my favorite Star Wars character now. That's why I'm wearing her outfit right now. When I saw her in this show, I was like, Mon Mothma is the most stylish woman in the galaxy. She's got Princess Leia beat. I'm sorry. I love Princess Leia. I love Carrie Fisher, but Mon Mothma's outfits in this show were incredible. I want to know more about her husband. What's up with him? Is he evil? Um, what's going on? Is she really going to basically sell off her daughter for the sake of the galaxy? I mean, Luthen has that incredible monologue talking about giving up everything, for the sake of this rebellion. Um, and I mean, doing that with your own daughter. I mean, talk about giving up things for the sake of building a better galaxy. It's pretty crazy. I would never do it. Um, very interesting. I even thought that Dedra was really interesting, and I felt myself caring about her and caring about, you know, her moving up the corporate ladder because I'm like, yeah, go, boss babe. And then I'm like, wait, no, I shouldn't be saying that because you're an Imperial. Why do I care so much about you? Why do I
For the
care
order.
so much about Cyril and his mother's relationship? Also, why hasn't Cyril happened? Something wrong has happened in merchandising if I can't
Yeah.
have my
Somebody dropped the ball.
cereal.
Yeah, I love that you love this series because of Mon Mothma's fit. That's where you're going with that. Like her clothes
She
were on
was
point. The story,
fantastic. They
it's,
were.
it's whatever. Um, yeah, I guess so. Again, with Andor, it's the same way as Book of Boba Fett, where it starts out with these like we're here, but now we're flashing back. But with the Andor flashbacks, I think it made less sense because you flash back and you're like, yeah, it takes you a minute to go, where are these kids? What are we doing? And it's like, okay, you assume that that's Andor, but then they're speaking a different language, and I don't know.
Oh,
To me
Marva.
it
I
was a
love
rough start.
Marva.
Yeah. Yeah,
Sorry.
but the prison break. By the time you get to the prison break, fantastic, and I'm looking forward to season 2. So don't get me wrong on that. But again, in this pecking order because of its importance and the fact that it really is, it's a ramp up to a one-off movie, which I loved. I loved Rogue One. No hate there. Why did they not tell Jen Urso's story? Why did they decide to tell?
Uh, why couldn't we get more K2SO? I needed more Alan Tudyk in this show. That was my biggest complaint about this
Yeah,
show. Not enough
that's a
K2SO.
that's a valid complaint. Um, Okay. All right. So, that's your number 2. My number 2, because I haven't said it yet, is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and because I think how excited I was about it. You were talking about the fate of these characters, but when they start to like put the Inquisitor lore into that, I'm like, yes, I want to know more about that because again, that's something that comes really into big play with Rebels. And this is where I feel like Dave Filoni was like bringing he keeps pushing his animated characters into the real world, and I'm here for it. So I but also I think that it was neat to see an additional showdown between Obi-Wan and Anakin that we haven't seen
Hmm.
yet. um
And we find out why or how Obi-Wan figured out that Anakin turned into Vader
yeah.
and why he calls him Darth instead of Anakin.
Yes, I haven't felt that presence since. Yeah. um Yeah, by the way, you're talking about memes. Um, this is one I want to show that came up this week in my feed, and I'm like, I'm excited about it. It was Anakin. This is Obi-Wan. He enjoys playing the floor is lava. Obi-Wan, I
No,
sure hope we could play it someday.
no, so wrong.
Anakin, I have the high ground. That there's just a lot of that story that I feel like it fit well into that universe. The whole idea that that Ben has been in hiding, and he's been like really true to the hiding until Leia needed him, and then he comes out of hiding to help her. It's like, wait, my kid's good. Why what you screwed your kid up? Mine's where he should be. Like, we split this up. Bail. What are you doing? So again, I feel like it was one that I was really excited about when it came out. It is prequel based, but it's also the OG characters. It's Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Um, so to me, that was one where I was like, I'm kind of here for that. The problem that I have with this, and I think we talked about this again. I've talked about it a little bit with when we talked about Andor, and I've talked about it, I think, when we've done our reviews, is that if you are a casual Star Wars fan, when you see the stuff on Disney Plus, it is all out of order. It is just it makes no sense. It's like, oh hey, that
Yeah.
Andor is up. Let me watch that because it's related to Mandalorian. Oh, it's not related to Mandalorian. Oh, okay. So when does this happen? So that it's all over the place as opposed to when, with a few exceptions that they make very clear, like Captain Marvel. everything else in the Marvel universe pushes the main story forward. In Star Wars, we're going and jumping all over the place. So as a casual like viewer, I would understand if you were a little bit confused. And Star Trek does that a little bit too, because like Discovery and Strange New Worlds is kind of they jump back before the original series, and I don't know. I just, because you jump back and forth, I feel like it's a little jarring to the casual viewer. To me, it's nice that it's not that I get to go back and revisit these characters, and that it's fun. So the funny thing is, now that I'm looking at our sheet, there's one left, and neither of us have talked about it. So as I suspected, we are aligned at the very end. Do you want to go ahead and talk about your number one?
When I have talked about this ranking and my criteria being how much do I care about these characters, and it started off with the Young Jedi Adventures where I'm like, I really don't care about these characters. They mean nothing to me. And then, as we're going through them, I'm like, we get to the Bad Batch. I'm like, yeah, I care about these main characters, but really I didn't care so much about the side characters. And then we get to like Obi-Wan, where it's like, I know what's going to happen to him. I know what's going to happen to Leia and Bail, but and just thinking about the side characters, like in Andor, that's why I loved that show. But with all of these, it's kind of like I either loved the main characters or I loved the side characters. But The Mandalorian, I love everybody. I love them all. I love every single character in this show. When they pulled that blanket back and you see the little baby Yoda, oh my God. I think my heart melted. I
Dun,
didn't
dun.
know that I needed that in my life. And now I can't imagine my life without him in it. Honestly, I had to steal my kids' nightlight tonight because I wanted this. And it was between, I had to ask them, can I have either this or can I have your stuffy? And they didn't want to give up either one. I was like, please, please, please. Finally, they let me have the nightlight because there is no way that my son is not sleeping with his baby Grogu. So love him. He's like my third child. Yeah. Yep. I love the characters other than Mandalorian and Grogu. Like I said, Fennec Shand is one of my favorite characters. She's been in two of these shows that we've talked about already. This is the third one. Love her in all three.
Mulan.
Yes. So outside of Star Wars, my favorite franchises are Back to the Future and Rocky. Had a grandmother who lived in Philadelphia, so really, really big on Rocky. So excited to see Apollo Creed, Grief Karga, amazing. Love seeing him. Love seeing Doc Brown show up in an episode of The Mandalorian. And then the other side characters like IG-11, loved him. As a droid, just Taika Waititi, he did such a good job with that. Yes. I know that people don't like the actress, but I really liked the character of Cara Dune. I already mentioned Pelimoto, love her.
Right.
Loved meeting Dr. Pershing. Loved Moff Gideon is a great villain. Loved getting to see Bo-Katan in live action. Not Cobb Vanth, sorry. I did love Cobb Vanth, but what's his
Cad
name?
Bane.
Cad Bane. Love seeing Cad Bane in live action. Probably the only thing that I liked about The Rise of Skywalker, other than the Reylo kiss, was Babu Frick. I love Anzellans. They're my new favorite Star Wars creature. And so you see this little Anzellan and Grogu hugging him, and I'm like, I cannot handle all of this cuteness all at once. And he's like, bad baby, bad baby. Oh my gosh, I can't. So cute. So cute. it's cuteness overload. And when Grief Karga is like, "Do the magic hand thing, baby," and then Grogu just kind of like waves at him. Adorable, adorable. When he's eating his cookie and then he gets sick in space and he's got his arms up. There's nothing that Grogu can do that's wrong. Everything about him is wonderful, and I love him so much. And if anything were to ever happen to him, honestly, I am so glad that Din Djarin got him back, because I was really worried about his welfare when he went off with Luke Skywalker. Um, so I can't have anything happen to my little Grogu. I love him so much.
Yeah. I was looking at Ronald was saying, where was it that you said that? I want to. Mando is the tops for recent Star Wars. I agree, but also Mandalorian to me reignited a huge love of Star Wars, not just the OG fans of the original or the people who were Reylos and got into the Force Awakens trilogy, but across the board, like, like you said, your kids love Grogu. And you could take a character like that and run it into the ground, Olaf, but or you can do this and it's people don't seem to get sick of it, and they're doing it with a lot of balance. Like, it seems to really work well with that character. And I was at Star Wars Celebration a couple years ago, and they brought out the Grogu puppet, and it was like everybody just melted. It was crazy. It was incredible. And all of the stars of the show, Pedro Pascal seems to really feel like, kind of a sense of humility about all of this, like, that he's humbled by all the fandom of it. And I think it's really well done. It's done like a Western, and Westerns really aren't in style. And yet here you are, the music and this, this bounty hunter, and it really, the whole thing ties together so well. And it,
Oh,
it
I didn't
pays,
even
it
think
pays,
about the music. I love the
yeah, dum
music too.
dum. It pays homage to the original, while like you said, taking these brand new characters on brand new adventures. And this is the way. And people say that, and I have spoken, and Grogu and the memes, and
Oh,
it's
Queel! I didn't
crazy.
even mention Queel. I loved him too. See,
I know
like
you love
every
them all.
single character in this show, I
Yeah,
love and I care
yeah.
about. And I was so
So
sad
I
when he
mean,
died.
honestly, again, I just I think that this to overuse ignite the spark. I feel like this one ignited the spark and lit the fire, and everyone was back on board with the Mandalorian. It was so well received, and it again, he's got that look and feel of Boba Fett. He brings Boba Fett into, like, into the story, while still it's not necessary that he stay there in the story, because all of those ancillary characters you're talking about, we're happy to spend time with them, even away from Din Djarin, even away from Grogu. We're happy to spend time with these characters. And I think that they can. It's great. I was about to say they could do no wrong, but I'm wondering what this Star Wars, what this movie version is going to do. They're making a movie. For those of you who didn't see the news, they're making a movie of the Mandalorian. And you're breaking that formula of the way that the series is set up. Mandalorian season 4 apparently is still on the slate to happen, but there's going to be a movie. So I don't know. It feels weird, like maybe you're overreaching to do the movie, but I'm here for it. I'll go see it. I just hope it doesn't mess it up.
And with your criteria of how does it fit into the canon, seeing Luke Skywalker kind of not be a great teacher, seeing the seeds of the First Order starting,
Yeah.
seeing what has happened in that in between zone, when it's like you saw Return of the Jedi and it ended so happy with all the Ewoks dancing around. What the heck? What the heck? 30 years later, all of a sudden there's a new empire. I
Right.
like being able to see, how that's possible. And I hated Palpatine returning, but I like seeing this, you know, uh, extra material to help explain it.
Yeah. There's a long way to go in what they can explain in these characters that they're introducing along the way. It's really neat to see. And
I
again,
mean, the
if
Bad
you're
Batch.
If
The
you're a
Bad
casual,
Batch.
go ahead.
T- it tells you why, how, it tells you why there's no clones anymore and why, but cloning technology still exists because of, I don't remember her name, the one Kaminoan they saved at the end of the Bad Batch season one. I haven't seen Bad Batch seasons two and three, but season one at least makes me very interested about what's happening.
So again, I think that The Mandalorian is by far the best thing that they've done, and it has inspired Ahsoka and Book of Boba Fett to exist. And they all kind of connect in a sort of connected world at the same time, and then you throw Andor in there to kind of tell a little bit of a prequel to Rogue One, and you throw Obi-Wan in there to tell a story in between there, and we've got more content coming, right? Rogue Squadron was killed to my knowledge. I think that one's done. I don't think they're going to be bringing that one out. But you've got
Right.
Skeleton Crew, you've got the Acolyte. But again, the Acolyte, you're talking about going back to the High Republic. Blah, like, I mean, I'm here for it. I want to see it, but it's just so much of this content connects, and so much of it is jumping back and forth. So Skeleton Crew with Jude Law, I think that'll be cool. Acolyte, Andor season 2 is coming, and then we're done with Andor, and then that'll run us right into Rogue One, and then Bad Batch season 3, and then Lando's a question mark too, because originally the idea was there would be a Lando series, and then off of the Han Solo movie or the Solo movie with Donald Glover as Lando
I
again, but now they're talking about it
I
being a
love
movie
Solo.
instead. Yeah. Well, and you and I
I
talked
mean,
about
if
doing that this
Solo
year
didn't take too long.
for May the 4th, is doing Solo as a review, because we haven't touched that one yet. Um, but again, they announced the Ahsoka season 2 and the Mandalorian movie, and then again we know Skeleton Crew, Acolyte, Andor season 2, Bad Batch season 3, Lando something, and Mando season 4 are all on the list. So there's a lot more coming. Nothing coming like tomorrow, which after we've ranked all this, I'm like, give
Why
me
not?
more. Give me more, exactly. So I would like for there to be something coming tomorrow. Let me ask you this question. Is there, and I feel like you and I are on the same page with this, but think of it in terms of everyone else, and maybe you guys in the chat can tell us, is this too much?
No, no,
Again,
it's
I don't think
not.
so. Okay.
Not for me. I
Yeah.
mean, my husband has not watched any of the animated stuff. He's only watched the live action stuff. So, but I don't see him turning down any of it. He's certainly a more casual Star Wars fan than I am, but maybe he's higher on the list than the average person because he still has his at or AT-AT. I don't know how people prefer to say it.
Add
He
at,
still has
add
his
at or
from
AT.
the 80s when he was a child.
Dawn
Um,
said too much question mark?
I don't, the limit does not exist, to quote Katie Heron.
I'm just again, I feel like the word the word fatigue was used when they were putting out the Reylo trilogy, and then also putting out Solo and Rogue One. I had no problem with it, but the word fatigue was used because the box office numbers were low. And the testing
I
of Rogue One was originally, it was supposed to be totally separate, but then they're like, it doesn't test so well. Let's throw Darth Vader in there and make it more a part of the series. And so again, the word fatigue was used. The word fatigue is being used with some of the Marvel stuff, and I think that the Marvel stuff, the difference is that some of the stuff is just
it's not
not
good.
as good. Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't think
So
it's fatigue. I think, at least with Marvel, I think it has to do with the stories are not as compelling. I don't think it's
and
fatigue.
and then as we're talking about the fatigue, and they're cutting back on the movies because there were so many movies that were in production of talking about with Star Wars, and then here comes the Mandalorian, and again we're back. Everybody's on board. So, and all of
I
these
mean, how could
shows
you
that,
not?
like,
Did you have you
I know,
seen
right?
Grogu?
Yeah. So no, have you seen Grogu? Have I seen Grogu? Of course. Don't even trip. Um, yeah, I'm excited about what's out there. I'm excited about what's next. Skeleton Crew is one that I'm really looking forward to, and even the Acolyte, because the High Republic is something we know very little about unless you read the books. And That's not
I
me.
mean,
I would rather watch 10 movies than read one book.
Young Jedi Adventures is High Republic, isn't it?
So anyway, all right. So, coming up on Deep in the Plus. So, li- so much to do and so little time. Coming up on Deep in the Plus. Last week we did Elemental with Patrick. This week we've got our Star Wars ranking. Next week we're doing Mrs. Doubtfire finally. So that's your homework for next week. And then my good friend Maleko is coming back on January 24th to do the original Dumbo, and I'm going to be sad and cry when I watch it because again, that's one of those I'm like I don't like being sad. So when I'm
That's
going
why
back
you
and
ranked it
watching
up
movies,
so low.
I don't pick up. I don't pick Bambi. I don't pick, those. So there was a bit in Friends where Phoebe didn't know any of the movies that she had watched as a kid the right way because her mom always turned it off when the character was going to die. So she didn't know
Oh
that Old
no,
Yeller died, and she didn't know that Bambi died, and all that. So
Bambi doesn't
um,
die?
not Bambi, Bambi's mother. My bad. You're like Bambi doesn't die. Oh, you haven't seen the uncut version, Desi? Oh my gosh, you've got to see the uncut version.
Like,
So much death. It's
did my
actually
parents also pause
it's actually Ahsoka's mom that kills Bambi. Um,
it? I knew it. I knew it.
I knew it. You gotta know that. And I want to give a special shout out to our wigs. We love our wigs, the WDWNT Interglobe Society. Thank you guys so much for being friends of the blog. And if you want to know more about our Patreon, you go to patreon.com/WDWNT. Come be part of the family. This Sunday night, 9 p.m. We've got another episode of Park Center. You can go back and watch last week's where Desi was on and I was on, and it was a fun
You
time.
were
I was there. We talked about 2024 and our expectations for the park. So please go back, watch Park Center last week, and then join us next Sunday night at 9 p.m. for a new edition of Park Center. News Tonight is on hiatus right now, so spend a lot of time with us. We like hanging out with you guys. Thanks for everybody who's in the chat tonight. We really appreciate it. And I usually we would say, would you recommend this? But I just want to get final thoughts from you then, Desi, because I feel like we would recommend almost everything that's on this list. But let's just take one last look at the list. We kind of aligned on the these two at the bottom, kind of
hmm
aligned on these two, and we certainly aligned on
we
this one as being number one.
we were way off on our Andor and Ahsoka.
True.
Those are the ones that we were way off on.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I I love Star Wars. Just period. I love Star Wars. I I I would recommend all of these, honestly. And the only one that I would probably not recommend is Young Jedi Adventures because unless you have young kids, why are you watching it? Unless maybe you do care about the High Republic era and you want to learn more about it. Um, but yeah, just all of these are good. Go there is not a limit to how much Star Wars content I can consume. I'm gonna go finish Bad Batch 2 and 3 right after we get off this video because now I'm reignited with my love of the Bad Batch. I'm like, oh yeah, I need to go back and finish watching those.
Ignite the spark.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm going to say the same thing is that all of Star Wars, like I said, when I was a little kid, never in my wildest dreams did I think that there would be this much Star Wars, that we would have a, a Sophia the First version of Star Wars that's sitting out there, much less all of these other great shows. And I love that they give you different opportunities to enjoy different parts of Star Wars. And it's its own whole universe, and it's fantastic to watch it, and then pick and choose. You don't have to watch all of it, but why wouldn't you? Because it's Star Wars. Hello. It was really neat to see the Star Cruiser. You and I both did the Star Cruiser at different times, but we both did the Star Cruiser, and seeing the things that
What?
they what see I don't I've
What?
probably got something Star Cruiser within reach here somewhere, but I seeing some of this stuff brought to life there, seeing some of this stuff brought to life in Galaxy's Edge. That was another thing we didn't really talk about, is that a lot of these characters show up in Galaxy's Edge when these shows start. We get to see Chopper in live form showing up at Galaxy's Edge, and we get to see, Hera, or we get to see Ahsoka, or Mandalorian and Grogu, or Boba Fett and Fennec. Like we've gotten to see
Why can't we have Fennec in Florida, please?
Now? No, no
Please.
reason now. There's no reason now.
Please
That's the
bring
thing that
her over
Patrick has
here.
always said, is that because the timeline would have been messed up for the Star Cruiser, but now that the Star Cruiser's not there, bring all that on. We need to see these characters walking around, and it not be just, just the Chewie and Rey on some other secret mission, and Kylo
We
and
have
two
Mando and
stormtroopers.
Grogu here.
Yeah, but I'm just saying,
So
like,
why
bring them
can't
all.
we have, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bring them all.
So,
I'm just, a Fennec Shand fangirl. Also, we didn't get Chopper in live action, but he is in the magic shot. So take a photo. You ask for a magic shot in Galaxy's Edge, you'll get Chopper.
yep. All right. Thank you, Desi. As always, appreciate it. If you guys have other thoughts, please leave them in the comments below. We would love to get your rankings, your top one, your bottom one, whatever you want to share with us. And hopefully you guys will be with us for, again, Park Center, Sunday night, 9 p.m., and then back here for another Deep in the Plus next week on Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Thank you guys. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Rising Moon.